Stormtroopers in Star Wars are said to have terrible aim, but this is all a lie. And today, we're gonna forever change the way you see the films. Hello everyone, welcome to Trick Theory, the channel that certainly sat wide-eyed during all of the prequels' epic lightsaber battles, but never batted an eye at how a group of over 50 on-screen Stormtroopers in a hangar or multiple squads that have boxed the escaping heroes in can consistently miss 110 counted shots, some of them firing at near point blank on the Death Star in episode 4. Then here in episode 5, where we watch one of them fire 12 shots into a nearby wall, and here in episode 6, where we see the Stormtroopers missing a sea of primitive teddy bears running at them. And these scenes that were certainly dotted about the original trilogy started what has become a long-running joke in the franchise, that if someone says you shoot like a Stormtrooper, they mean you suck, the lowest of the low. And the evidence is certainly stacked against them. I mean, these guys basically serve as a mass fodder for the Empire. That's practically all they're good for. So much so that the Empire seems all too willing to sacrifice them for whatever objective they have in mind. And that's just the thing. The Empire being run by a Sith Lord who, after creating an empire that severely punishes failure, is absolutely using his elite troops in any way he deems necessary, even if that means sacrificing a few here and there. And by sacrifice, I mean that the Imperial High Command and many times Vader are straight up telling them to suck on purpose, to be bad shots, because these guys would certainly exterminate near anything you put in front of them that isn't waving around a lightsaber. In episode 4, we see Luke, Obi-Wan, and their two pilots get tractor beamed into the Death Star after attempting to go to Alderaan, that the Empire just destroyed. With plans to likely hold whoever's on this lone ship prisoner, the Empire then finds that they've knocked out the Stormtroopers meant to board their ship and are now posing as troops within the station. At this point in the film, the Empire is likely set on killing whoever dared to do this, but not knowing who or where they are, Luke, Han, and an imprisoned Chewie in tow manage to roam around the station until they get to the prisoner hold and free Princess Leia, escaping down the garbage chute, with the Stormtroopers opting to push start on the trash compactor rather than daring to dive in after them, but R2-D2 saves them and they manage to get out. At this point in the film, it's likely that the Stormtroopers called in about the breakout, as we see the freeing of their most valuable prisoner make its way all the way up to Imperial High Command, a High Command that most certainly identified these intruders as rebels, cause who else would be daring enough to board the Death Star to free one of the rebellion's leaders? And this is where things take a clear turn, with the entire station that sources say houses somewhere over 500,000 troops, plus other supporting crew, now on high alert. They know these rebels have the princess, but they have their ship. And this is where Vader sees an opportunity, and orders all of the troops on board not to shoot the escaping rebels, to make it look good enough for the rebels to think they actually got away. That way they won't suspect that Vader had a tracking beacon installed on the Falcon. So in the film, Vader was gambling that the rebels would take Leia back to the real location of their secret base on Yavin 4, where the Empire could finally crush the rebellion once and for all, and Grand Moff Tarkin confirms this as being what actually happens.
Sure, the homing beacon is secure aboard their ship.
After this, we then see the Death Star making its approach straight to Yavin 4 to destroy the found rebel base, but Luke and the rebels fight back, managing to destroy the Death Star. Later in episode 5, we then see the same exact order play itself out, as discovering that Luke is his son, Vader allows him to land, as he says,
"I do not want the Emperor's prize damaged."
From that point on, Luke is fired upon by Boba Fett, the best bounty hunter in the galaxy, who is clearly a better shot than the average Stormtrooper, who conveniently misses every shot, along with one Stormtrooper holding Luke at bay by firing into the wall, as the others scoot on by. The station then quickly becomes abandoned as Luke unknowingly makes his way straight to Vader. Both instances are part of a plan to finally squash the rebellion, with the troopers missing enough as to fool the heroes, but not so badly as to rouse any suspicion. And both are key parts in starting the famous Stormtroopers are terrible shots joke that has has practically become canon in Disney. So if they're not terrible, then just how good are these guys really? How terrifying are Stormtroopers for any rebel soldier to go up against? To figure this out, let's look at instances where the Stormtroopers actually try to hit their targets, where they shoot to kill. And this is where things suddenly get a lot harder for the rebellion, and I mean a lot with a capital A, as we see rebel pilots and troops getting wiped out left and right, with only their most elite soldiers and pilots surviving the battle, if even that. Not only are the rebels outgunned by the sheer numbers of troops, but many times they're straight up outmatched. In the first Star Wars scene ever, we see the Empire getting ready to storm Princess Leia's cruiser, the Tantive 4, as a group of 10 rebel soldiers prepare for the attack by creating one heck of a bottleneck or choke point at the door, with more rebels doing the same in the narrow hallways behind them in case they need to fall back. And if history and various battles throughout it serve as any sort of marker, then we should see the Empire suffer some major casualties as they slowly push their way through the rebels' defensive lines. Instead, we see the rebels just get crushed in a span of under 10 seconds, falling back to their other lines that also don't do anything. In total, the Empire suffered a mere 3 Stormtrooper casualties while killing and taking the ship of an estimated 200 to 600 rebels captive. We even hear Obi-Wan say the line,
"These last points, too accurate for sand people. Only Imperial Stormtroopers are so precise."
But really, it's the statistic, the stats of just how accurate Stormtroopers are that is just baffling. Almost as baffling as the time I've spent working and throwing money at coaches to actually understand YouTube and to get my channel's programming on track, aka science theories on the cool stuff we like to watch, rather than throwing another unrelated power video at you. When it comes to the character stats of just how accurate Stormtroopers are, let's look back on the scene where they board the Tantive 4, throwing the scene into a video editor and combing through it frame by frame. Out of the hundreds of shots that were taken, only a near 97 came from the Imperial Stormtroopers, with them taking out 11 targets before Vader walked through the door, giving the Stormtroopers an accuracy of 8.81%. And as lousy as this may seem, according to military researchers, when looking at recent global conflicts, US forces expended nearly 250,000 bullets for every enemy combatant killed, giving the military as a whole an accuracy of 0.0004%, which isn't really a fair comparison at all, as this is one skirmish versus the various strategies of an entire military. So looking at more comparable firefights like the British siege of Musakala, we saw British soldiers hit one target for every 200 shots, giving them an accuracy of 0.005%. Or in World War II's European theater, Allied soldiers routinely fired about 1,292 rounds for every German casualty, giving them an accuracy of 0.00077%. And finally, in the Battle of Gettysburg, soldiers fired about 100 bullets for every resulting casualty, giving them an accuracy of 0.01%. So by these numbers, Galactic Stormtroopers are incredibly accurate, even with their failure to bring ships like the Falcon or its crew down. But what about all the times someone put on a Stormtrooper's helmet and said no wonder they can't hit anything? Well, you may not know that in Star Wars canon, each helmet actually contains many unique features, from a heads-up display, infrared, night vision, anti-flash blinding lenses, a targeting system, and a holographic vision processor that allows them to see through smoke, fire, and darkness. Not only that, but the helmet only responds to the specific wearer it was issued to and sized for, with a simple built-in scan allowing the helmet to verify their intended user, which then turns on the helmet's features and makes stealing the armor practically useless. Not only do Stormtroopers have advanced helmets, but their armor is just as useful. Something that you may not have noticed in the films is that many of the Stormtroopers who get shot and fly to the ground don't actually die. You see, Stormtrooper armor is made out of a heavy plastoid, and while heavier than the hero's plot armor, this plastic armor, much like some real-world plastics, is derived from plants. plants and is highly engendered, meaning the Empire goes through one heck of a process to combine multiple resins and plastic polymers to create something that uniquely spreads out the impact of any projectile weapon over the armor, with the chest being reinforced, allowing troops to take a direct shot and keep on moving, or most notably throughout the franchise, get knocked down only to get back up and keep fighting minutes later. Unfortunately, Stormtroopers are really not protected against blunt force trauma. But if none of this was very interesting, then I saved an interesting fact for last. Much like Batman, every Stormtrooper is issued a utility belt full of gear like a grappling hook, water, and something that Batman also carries with him so he can keep up the most dangerous sleep schedule known to man that we go over in this video. Remember though, it's all a trick. See you in the next one.